It's an old Flemish folk tune. Thanks for tuning in anyway, folks. Nice to see you. Stevie Coyle here, webcasting in on Facebook from Mighty Fine Guitars in Lafayette, California. Nice to see you. Just a couple of guitars to feature today. All kinds of guitars have been coming in, but I wanted to feature two in particular. Remarkable guitars in that as many fairly obscure and esoteric guitars has come into the shop, I have never had one of each of these before. The one I'm playing right now is a Poling. Lovely Brazilian rosewood thing. Am I getting this in the camera there, Ducky? How's that? Ooh. There's real live Brazilian rosewood, kids. And the top on this one, I have to check my notes here. The top on this one is Swiss spruce. I'll swing around and show you that. There's the lovely Swiss spruce. Ooh la la. And this is a big, beefy guitar. Brazilian rosewood has a reputation for having kind of big, beefy tones, lots of overtones, lots of resonance, lots of sustain, and this one is one of those. Let me tune in here and see what's happening my own self. There we go. I'll read you some of the details. Like I say, the guitar just came in, and I've not memorized the details yet, but what we have here is a European spruce, Swiss spruce top, Brazilian rosewood back and sides, Brazilian all over this guitar. Appointments, bindings, end graft, etc. End graft is very lovely. Check that out. I was impressed by that. That's just kind of showing off because nobody ever sees that, but unless you look at it, and then you can get to ooh and ah over that as well. I love it when builders do that. The bridge is Brazilian rosewood. Purflings on the top are flamed mahogany. Side purflings are a single veneer line of maple, and that's more kind of just showing off stuff, but you know, it's that good kind of showing off where it doesn't shout at you from across the room, but there's some sort of detail involved that's really difficult to execute beautifully, and this is executed perfectly twice. These side purflings, these two little maple lines, really difficult to strip those little bad boys in there and get them just right, and it's just right all the way around, compound and multiple curves. Pretty hip. This is Poling. The neck is mahogany with a single line of Brazilian rosewood. Yeah, a little Brazilian rosewood down the middle of the back there. This has got a dual carbon fiber truss rod inside, so the neck is easily and widely adjustable depending on where you are. Here in, I always brag on the fact that here in Lafayette in the East Bay, San Francisco Bay, we've got nearly ideal humidity conditions almost all the time. It hovers around 45%. It's quite wonderful. Other places where you have to deal with forced air heating in the winter and forced air cooling in the summer means you're going to be doing a whole lot of adjusting of your guitar as humidity and temperature change. And being able to do that with a double action truss rod, carbon fiber in this case, means that it's nice and light. Not a lot of weight is added to the guitar with a big heavy truss rod, but you've got all that flexibility going on inside there. The backstrap and pigheaded, are Brazilian rosewood. Nut saddle and pins are fossilized walrus ivory, and Waverly tuners. Nice wide fingerboard. Now this is one of the things that I'm frequently asked about in the shop. People that have had their guitar for years and years. For a lot of folks, a lot of gentlemen of a certain age, let's face it, primary customer, the folks that walk in here, are accustomed to playing dreadnoughts, the ones that they had from college, or the ones they bought better dreadnoughts after the bad dreadnoughts they had in college. Big, big guitars, but typically really narrow fingerboard, 1 11/16 across the nut right here. Well, the next step up, and this is what really got me onto the guitar I still play nowadays that I got at Griffin Stringed Instruments years ago when I worked there. 1 3/4 inches across the nut. That 1/16 of an inch makes all the difference in the world for fingerstyle, I think. Although you can play any type of music on any guitar, of course. This is, that difference in width, really, I can really feel it in trying to execute something like in that Sweet George Brown thing that I'm doing there, you know, the bass bass is doing da 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 da, while the melody is doing its thing up top. Having a little extra real estate in the left hand is really useful instead of having the strings so close together. Contrary-wise, if you're a strummer, if you're a single note picker, a lot of bluegrass with single notes, or you're playing lead guitar, chances are you want the strings to be closer together over here. Because if you're going to be strumming, you can grab them all of a piece, and if you're going to be doing single note stuff, jumping from string to string quickly is going to be of primary importance to you. And these are shades of distinction, of course, I realize, that are going to be totally lost on most of us. But if you're a really specialized fingerstyler or a flat picker, you probably want to consider one guitar or the other, unless, of course, you just happen to fall in love with the guitar that chooses you. I had a customer in here the other day said, well, you've heard the story, of course, the Harry Potter thing about the wand choosing the wizard. I use that analogy all the time in here, and that's ideally what you're looking for. And I have to say, folks, in a shop like this, where I've got dozens and dozens of really fine handmade guitars, you can just kind of walk in, play a bunch, and let one choose you, much more than you have to worry about whether or not this one is going to stand the test of time, or this one's going to sound good, or what do I really need? Do I need to know what the braces are made of? Instead of all of those usual considerations that guitar shoppers make, I think in a shop like this, you can just kind of walk in, use your eyes first, because there has to be some visual appeal probably. Use your eyes first, pick up a few guitars, and see if one doesn't choose you. That's the holy grail of guitar shopping, I think, is finding a guitar that chooses you. We have a question in the back. Well, yes, up high there.
What's your opinion of guitars made by pre-war guitar company?
Do you know pre-war guitar company? I have not played any pre-war guitars. That's another brand that has not, for whatever reason, come into the shop. And as I've said before, you know, this is the greatest job in the world. I just kind of sit here and do my thing. I dust the guitars and I change the strings and I work on the website and I send out email and I answer email. And I just wait for people to walk in the door. And a pre-war, the brand name pre-war, has not walked in yet. And I look forward to the day one does. This is the first Poling that has walked in the door, and I'm very impressed. I think I may have played his guitars at Healdsburg years and years ago, but I don't have a distinct memory of them. And this one's quite lovely, and I really like, back to the thing I was talking about. I told you that to tell you this. The thing I was talking about before, neck width, this is extra wide. This is really quite wide across the fingerboard here. What have we got? Nut 1 5/8. That's, yeah, okay. So that's really wide. 10/16. No, to a 2-inch width fingerboard. This would be more comfortable for you than most guitars. I've got another guitar that happens to be right in back of me here. That little Muth right there also has a very wide fingerboard. So we've got all kinds of stuff in here. Generally speaking, and it certainly holds true in Mighty Fine Guitars here, the bigger the guitar, the narrower the neck to a certain point. Certainly the dreadnoughts and the jumbos tend to have 1 11/16 over here at the nut. Most of the whole wall of OMs, I'll have Miss Valerie show you later on. There's a whole wall full of OM guitars. Most of those are 1 3/4 across the nut, as are the guitars on the wall of small. And there's variations, of course. I actually have an OM in that typically would have long scale, 25.4, and I realize stuff, but I do. This actually has a short scale OM, so there are variations, you know, and sometimes they show up here. But typically the OM size, triple O size, not quite as big as a dreadnought Martin size, made by whoever, typically has 1 3/4. This is even wider than that, really wide, and I like it. If you're a thumb over player, you might think twice about a guitar like this because it's a little tougher to get your thumb over the top to do those bass notes. But depends on how your hand is put together. It's not even just the length of your fingers necessarily. People say, well, I've got small hands. Here, show, you know, put up, just say, yeah, you do have small hands, but it's often as not the profile of the neck in back. This one, the profile of the neck, the shape that fits in your hand if you do kind of a standard guitar grip like this rather than the classical grip, if you do the kind of the folky grip. This feeling is very important to you, chances are. And on this guitar, you've got kind of a C shape. It doesn't have kind of deep shoulders on it like a D shape would have. This is kind of a more of a C shape, and it's almost a bit of an open C at the top. Rather than being closed up, and having a really distinct berm sort of there at the corner. This one is fairly open at the top to accommodate that neck width, or rather the fingerboard width. And that's kind of the cool thing about this guitar, I think, is the fingerboard is rather wide, but the neck itself, the part that sits in your hand here, is not particularly wide, for the most part, until you get to the very top, where it's less critical, presumably. Not classical, but a classic Brazilian rosewood sound. Really big. As I've discussed before, it's really difficult to talk about sound. There are two words that apply to sound natively, I'm told, and I think it works so far. Louder and softer. Everything else as a way to describe sound is like dancing about architecture, as they say. How do you do it? How do you talk about sound? You use analogies, metaphors, similes, all of that stuff, that it's like this and it's like that. It's buttery or it's oaky, all those terms that apply to wine. Wine doesn't have butter in it, and even though it probably does have notes of oak, there's lots of terminology applying to various pursuits in life that aren't native to that pursuit. And certainly talking about guitars, this has that big, beefy, there's lots of oomph behind it. There's lots of resonance. There's a lot in there, and it's fairly easy to get it out. Some guitars have a lot in there, but you have to kind of work hard to get to the threshold where they start doing their thing. They really activate. This guitar, like a lot of Brazilian guitars, doesn't do that. I'll have that for you sometime soon. Working on that. Tunings. This is, Brazilian rosewood back and sides tends to be really great because it picks up and runs with overtones. Tends to work really well with open tunings where you've got a couple of strings tuned the same way. Here I've got 2 Ds working, swing into 3 Ds here. Poling guitar. So new, it's just been sent down from Washington, and we haven't even figured out a price for it, but somewhere in the sixes, I'm guessing, 65, 6-ish, somewhere around there. And it's been played. Not to say it's been beat up. It's got a few little here's and there's, but it's not been beat up, and it's been played in. This guitar has been vibrated. You can feel that this guitar has not sat in a case unplayed for years and years. Do I know what year this is yet? Checking my notes here. I'll have to ask the gent that sent it down what year it is. Or maybe it says right inside. Who knows? Poling, P-O-L-I-N-G. And there's some lovely kind of wood-burned stuff going on back there that I'm going to need to get my little endoscope out and check that out. An unfortunate name for a very useful tool, the old endoscope. It's not that. Although things are looking up. Well, let's move on swiftly to the next guitar, which is this one. This is Laurent Brondel. I've not had a Brondel in the shop, and I know I've played his guitars at the Healdsburg Guitar Festival years ago. This is Wengi wood, which is one of the more fun woods to say out loud. It's really dark, really chocolatey. I believe Wengi is a rosewood cousin. I think it's in the rosewood family. I'm not sure it's a Dalbergia, but I think it's in the rosewood family. And let me see, what are my notes on that? This is a lovely thing as well. This is one of those ones that, I took pictures of it yesterday for Instagram, and as I posted the picture, I thought, you can't really see how cool this guitar is, and it's not the fault of the guitar or the camera or the photographer, thank you very much. It's just, this is a guitar that when you get up close to it, you see how cool it is. The purfling, Ducky, can you come in close on the purfling here? Ladies and gentlemen, a hand from my own dear Valerie May. Thank you very much. Personing the camera and the microphone. Can you come in close on that purfling there and show, is that going to show properly? That sort of that's going on in the purfling there. The binding, folks, is the stuff at the very edge. And the stuff between the binding and the top of the guitar. Now frequently this is either a layer of shell, abalone, mother of pearl, like that. Sometimes it's other strips of wood, but this little diagonal business is kind of nuts. That's just crazy fun. While you're in there, Ducky, can you show them the really wide grain we've got going here, this beautiful Adirondack? This is Adirondack spruce that is really dense. Dense? I'd love to. It's so dense that you can make it really thin. You can carve it really, really thin, slice it down, and that makes the guitar really resonant, typically, especially on the tops. So this guitar has a couple of things going for it, just looking at the top. Nothing you could probably see from even a few feet away, but totally, totally cool stuff when you get up close and start looking at it. A little more, here we go. A little more focused than the other guitar. The other guitar was big and washy. The Poling has just got this big, huge cathedral sort of sound. This is more chapel or churchy. Still lots of overtones. Another man done the full go round. Another man done the full go round. Put him in a box, put him in a ground. Do you hear that coffin sound? You can weep and you can moan, but that old boy is never coming home. Another man done the full go round. Another man done the full go round. Roy Bookbinder song. Great piece. just caught myself. Oh, a question over here, yes?
Wood correction from Ian Bagger.
Yeah?
Wenge is not a rosewood, it's Melentia laurenti.
The hell you say? It's what is it relate? Ian, can you tell me what it's related to? Wengi wood? It's not a rosewood of any sort? It's good to have these corrections here because guitars come flying in here. That's right, yeah. Fact checking. Fact checking is so important. Don't get me started. But back to the music. I just caught myself doing something kind of interesting on this. Coming down there, I thought all of that had the low string open as the bass note, and doing a 6/4 alternation here. 6 string, 4 string, 6 string, 4 string. Here, sometimes I kind of wuss out because on some guitars, going to that G note is going to be out of tune or kind of limp sounding. This one has tons of beef, so the first time I came through that, I thought I'm going to fudge that a little bit. And then I heard it sort of at the end of its duration really light up. I thought, oh, that G note there at 65, 6 string, 5th fret is going to be fine. Lots of beef, you bet. Beef seems to be the word for the day. But talking about beefy guitars, I suppose it's as good a simile, metaphor, analogy as anything else. Great Roach's song. Just reminded me of it playing that big old chord there. Oh, let me give you some specs on this guitar here. That's the missing piece. This is Carpathian spruce top, Eastern European, Transylvanian wood. Take it from there. Wengi back and sides, head plates, edge, wedge, end wedge. Wengi wedge. It's got a Wengi wedge, kids. And heel cap, African mahogany neck, Gabon ebony fretboard bridge and pins, Ivoroid binding, and celluloid nitrate pickguard, Schertler black chrome tuners. It's got a pickup too, the K&K Pure Mini, Pure Western Mini, which is one of my big faves. The fret wire is EVO 55090, and it's got an oil varnish finish, which is another thing. We're talking about, I think it was me, that was talking about getting up close to a guitar and seeing the coolness once you get up close to it rather than it shouting at you from across the room, which can be cool as well. You get up close to this, it's got this glow to it. Nitrocellulose lacquer kind of encases the guitar in a very shiny sort of thing. And some people would rather see some of the wood grain kind of popping out instead of it being sort of encased in plastic. Some people like to, myself included, prefer to see a little bit of the grain popping out, a little more natural look, and a little more, what did we call that in college? I remember studying lighting design in college. Specular reflection, when you get light bounces off of both the finish, you're seeing light bounce off the finish, but you're also seeing light bounce off the stuff underneath the finish. You can see, and the upshot being, you can sort of see the wood through the finish better. And that's what oil varnish finish does for you. This back and side wood is so dark, it's certainly tough to see even in this light. It would be really tough on camera. But on the top here in particular, perhaps you can see, Ducky on the back there, can you see the little bits of grain that are poking out through the finish here? You mind coming in again? Thank you, dear. Can I get at a good angle where you can see sort of the grain poking through the finish? It's a little bit mottled. That's showing up? Great. Okay, good, good. And I like that a ton. A lot of people prefer the really super shiny, all even, no pores to the wood at all. I prefer something a little more organic like this, where you can see what's going on with the wood right through the finish. I like that a lot. My Alpha guitar, the Perlman guitar, is done with an alcohol-based finish, which is really light, really easy to repair, which is great in case I ever clobber it. But oil varnish gives it this really kind of lovely glow. This guitar is going to be $5,600 when it goes on the market, once I kind of buff it up and get it all looking pretty and get it up on the website. And this one is by Laurent Brondel. And you know what? Just because I needed to look him up myself, I believe we had met very briefly at the Healdsburg Guitar Festival years and years ago. Laurent says he was born in France. As far as I can remember, my life has been devoted to music. I went on a first tour with one of my first bands at age 17. He studied early at the Mirecourt National School of Luthery in the, starts with a V, mountains. Then life decided otherwise, and the next 18 years were spent living as a professional musician. He taught guitar as well. In the early 90s, he started working as a sound engineer and electronic musician, producing and mixing music for a handful of artists, along with his own music. Moved to New York City in 1999, and since 2003, he lives in Maine. Love for the guitar led me to study how the instrument is built. So he's always done his own setup and repair work, and after years after he had graduated from the School of Luthery, he got back to building guitars. And boy, oh boy, his guitars, I'm really pleased to have one in the shop. They're real unusual. Yeah, aesthetically, I shy away from anything that detracts from the beauty of wood and the elegant proportions of the guitar. I aim to build a tasteful instrument of outstanding tone and classic appearance, and I think he does. For large models, what does he say here? Smaller models, he builds in the Martin pre-war style with an almost flat top. This one is, he's got, where does he talk about this? The guitar isn't exactly, the top and back aren't exactly parallel to each other. Can you see that on the camera, Ducky? That the kind of the middle of the guitar is thicker and things thin out a little bit down here on the depth of the guitar. It's sort of like the guitar, the top of the guitar is shaped this way. It's also domed a bit this way. And that doming effect puts the wood under stress and makes the top even more responsive. Now, it always bears repeating, I think, that the sound of the guitar comes primarily from the lower bout. We call it the sound hole because it's the sound hole. But the sound of the guitar mostly comes from the lower bout. This is like a big speaker that projects the sound. And when that is put under tension, when it's built, instead of being perfectly flat, and no guitar is absolutely perfectly flat, there's always a bit of doming to it. This one is rather severely domed in a couple of different directions, which is totally cool. You can really see it pop up here, all the way across. It's not sort of like that belly that old Martins get behind the bridge. This is sort of this built-in doming going across both directions there. And you can feel that when you're playing it. It's really lively. The guitar just really speaks loudly and quickly. And you can back up from it. You don't have to play it loudly, but it's all, like I frequently say, I like the guitars where it's all there and you can play back from potential open full throttle. mind. These are the guitars I wanted to show you this time, folks. This is a Laurent Brondel. This model is the A2, I think he calls it. Yeah, the A2 Brute. And the other guitar is by Poling. And I've got a little more research to do on that fella. I remember him from years ago, but I don't think I've heard much about him since 2010 or so. So more research is in order, but a lovely guitar. Whatever else is happening in the Poling world, this is a lovely big... Yeah. Wow, what a thing. What a thing. Poling and Brondel, and they're both here at Mighty Fine Guitars. This is going to be in the 6s somewhere, 6,000, 6,500, somewhere in that neighborhood. And the Brondel is 5,500 is the asking on that one. Or 56? I have to look. Somewhere in the mid-5s. Did I say 56? Thank you. Thank you. My remote lobe. I appreciate it. Wonderful. And do stop by if you're in the neighborhood. The website is getting a big update here pretty soon. Lots of guitar photographs are going up. I'm all over Instagram as well, and Twitter. I still haven't figured out how to make Twitter fun, although I read other people's tweets and kind of venture into the deep waters on Twitter. But for guitar stuff, look for me mostly here on Facebook and on Instagram as Mighty Fine Guitars as well. And stop by the shop. I'm kind of in the heart of downtown Lafayette, if there is such a thing, and I think there is. I'm right here on Restaurant Row. There's certainly some really great food right around here. So you can tie in a little lunch beforehand or a little dinner on the backside of your visit to Mighty Fine Guitars at 85 Lafayette Circle here in Lafayette, California. Online at mightyfineguitars.com. Golly, have I left anything out? I suppose that's it right there. Thanks for stopping by. Do feel free to share this video with folks you think might like it. You can, once it goes up online there, you can share it. It'll go out to the world. La-di-da. And you can send it off to anybody you like or to any group you like. And sure would appreciate the word going out. Thanks very much for tuning in. Stevie Coyle here. Mighty Fine Guitars, Lafayette, California. Thank you, Ducky. Thank you, Barbara. Down the road. See you, kids.